Support the Amigos podcast and keep the Amiga goodness flowing for just $1 a month. Visit our page at patreon.com/AmigosPodcast.
Amiga, the first personal computer that gives you a creative edge.
Amigos, the podcast about everything Amiga. Amigos is a proud member of the Throwback Network, your home for quality retro podcasts. And now, here are your hosts, Aaron Dowdy and John Bodovkar Schaller.
Hi everybody, welcome to the Amigos. I'm John.
And I'm Aaron.
And today we're going to talk about Chaos Engine. But before we do, we've got a little bit of news. Aaron's going to be our newscaster today. He's got all the stories. Aaron, what's been going on in the world of Amiga?
Well, I hate to start off on a bummer, but we'll go ahead and get it out of the way. Dave Needle, who was very instrumental in the original Amiga 1000 and the chipset, passed away on Saturday. I've not heard why. I don't think they've listed why he passed away or anything surrounding his death. But he was always noted to be a good guy. He did convention circuit, I think. He did a lot of videos. If you look him up on YouTube and stuff, you should be able to find some stuff where Needle's talking about various Amiga stuff. He was also one of the co-creators of the Atari Lynx. If you're familiar with the Atari's handheld, it was a neat little gimmick that they came out with. It didn't get a lot of traction. I believe it was mostly because of the battery life. And I believe that was Epic's baby. And then Atari sort of usurped it in a very devious way, as I recall.
Yeah.
But this was one. He was co-creator of that. And I always thought that the Lynx was actually a pretty kind of a nifty little item.
Yeah, that's I know that's in all these new game by game podcasts. The Lynx one is one of the most interesting to me, just because it got a lot of ports of it got a lot of good ports, especially of Atari games. And a lot of people think that it had the best port of the Epic's titles, California.
Well, it would, I suppose.
Yeah.
I thought California. I remember playing California games on it. I was like, "Holy smokes!" I mean, it's just coming off the Game Boy.
Did you ever have a Lynx?
I never had one, but I had a friend who had one,
Mm-hmm.
and what a neat little unit. Again, and I think it was the Lynx that it had. I think it even had an early TV adapter too, as well, didn't it?
It might have that. It wouldn't
like a
surprise me.
tuner.
Yeah, because you could pop one of those tuners in the top. Like I know that the Game Gear had one.
Yeah. But the Lynx was neat. So it's kind of neat that he worked on that. And like I said, he was pretty instrumental. He was an Amiga engineer. He worked on the original chipset, but he was sort of the old guard of the Amiga. And so it's sad that he's gone, but not forgotten.
Yeah.
To happier news, this past weekend was the 25th anniversary of Lemmings. Kind of neat. They are still being played, I'm sure, around the world. I haven't heard much on recent Lemmings stuff. Have you heard anything about anything coming out in the near future for Lemmings?
No.
Yeah, it's a timeless game, and it's a lot of fun to play. And so, yeah, it's definitely worth celebrating. 25 years, it's amazing it's been around that long.
Yeah, well, this is not Amiga related, but I saw yesterday on Facebook that it's the 30th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda.
Oh.
So, 30 years, that's almost as long as I've been alive.
Yeah.
So, you were in your mid-20s at the time.
I'm gonna anger. Oh, thanks a lot. What a jerk. I'm going to anger a lot of people when I say I never liked that game, and I still don't like it. I never understood the popularity of it. Now, some of the sequels I thought were pretty good, pretty fun, but those original, the NES ones, I cannot for the life of me understand the popularity of them. God knows I've tried. If you like to go out and whack grass with a stick, I don't get it. I came off the PC.
Well,
where we were playing those kind of role playing games. When I think role playing games, I think D&D, the gold box stuff. And I just could not understand that.
It's a different series than Ultima. It's not going to give you the depth. The Zelda games are really puzzle games disguised as adventure games. Most of the action takes place in the dungeons where you're pushing blocks and doing things like that. And so if that's not your bag, it definitely the RPG mantle foisted upon it, especially in the early days, is a little bit misguided. But for console gamers, you took what you could get in those days.
Yeah, I suppose so. This is a little out of our usual fare, but I thought just because I happened to pick it up, and when I pay $13 for a magazine, I'm going to wring every bit of information out of this sucker. Over here in the States, if you look around, you can get Retro Gamer magazine. I'm sure a lot of people listening to this have heard of it. I think it comes out of the UK. It's a good magazine. I mean, it's usually quite good, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Good interviews.
It's printed on great paper. It's a nice size.
If you look at this current issue,
has the paper quality gone down some?
Yeah, you can kind of feel that.
Oh yeah, it's not as thick as it used to be.
Only it's not glossy like it used to be, but and we all have to pay the price. But anyway, over here these things are 13 or 14 US dollars. They're expensive. It's like a book. You're basically buying a book.
Right.
Anywho, they had a top 150 games of all time, or 150 greatest games ever, is the way this article is put out. And I thought it'd be neat to kind of look through a couple of these. We're not going to go through 150 games because these are from all eras, all systems. But just to see what kind of Amiga action or Amiga related stuff or stuff that got released on the Amiga. So I thought we'd go through a few of these. Then maybe the top 10 we might look around just to have a general chat about. We come from a console background. Boat definitely. I've got a few consoles myself, so kind of get our opinions on stuff. But I'm looking on the list here. I see Double Dragon, which had had some Amiga releases that were ranged in quality. If you've ever played those, Boat.
I've heard you're supposed to steer clear of the ZX Spectrum port.
Yeah. I see it coming in at 138. Frontier Elite 2, which is a great game. We'll be getting to that one at some point. 138 seemed pretty. I thought that was pretty low. I look on here. Somewhere in the early, let's see, 121, I see Civilization 2. Have you ever played any of the Civilization games, Bo?
I played a lot of 4 and quite a bit of 5, but I've never played the early ones. That was kind of before I was into the PC scene.
I played Civilization on my old Tandy 1000, and then when I got the Amiga, I picked it up, and holy smokes, is it better on the Amiga?
I'm sure. I can't even imagine on the Tandy 1000.
Oh, man.
The Tandy, was that... What kind of was that? Just a 64K kind of?
It was a PC clone, okay. But Tandy went the extra mile. They put a hard coded Windows type interface in it called Deskmate. That it came with every computer, and it booted up sort of like a Windows machine, but it was on the ROM. It was not good. But they tried. This is predates a lot of the Windows effectively.
This is a Radio Shack brand, right?
It's a Radio Shack. Well, Tandy was the Tandy brand that Radio Shack distributed.
Okay.
But it was basically a PC clone. But trust me when I say the Amiga version was better. I see a 120 Cannon Fodder, which we just covered a while back. So it's good to see that one making the kick. There's a lot of stuff here that I see that was on the Amiga, but wasn't necessarily something you would know the Amiga for. Like, for example, I saw Strider. I think Amiga had a copy of that. Syndicate. I think the Amiga had that on it. Impossible Mission. That's for a lot of the C64 people. But it was on everything. Mm-hmm. Did you ever play that one?
No. I've only heard that in the early printed versions of that game, it really was impossible because of a bug in it.
I believe that's the Master System. That's the problem with that one.
Okay.
On the Sega Master System. Final Fight. I believe that the Amiga had a version of that. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to figure out.
Yeah. UFO, Enemy Unknown. That was a pretty neat game. Back in it came in at 65. Civilization 1 at 62. There's a lot of love for Civilization. I was kind of surprised by that. Jet Set Willie at 55. You've played Jet Set Willie.
Yeah, no, I don't believe. Was there an Amiga port?
No, I think that's more of a C64 thing.
Yeah, even
or was that on the Amstrad as well? Yeah. Sensible Soccer.
All right.
51. So that's another one. Mm-hmm. That's kind of neat that it got up that high. 46. We just talked about it. Lemmings. So you're getting some here sprinkled in.
Right.
45. Speedball 2, which is put out by the same guys that put out the game we're talking about today. And Speedball 2, I own, and it's great. That's one I bought, and it's just one of the top games. When you weed towards the final top 30 or so, for the most part, you're getting into mostly console stuff. I will say Manic Miner. I noticed that. That's another favorite in there at 30. Let me see if there's anything else. Outrun at 22, but I don't think the Amiga version is going to be.
I don't think they were taking that one.
Going to be the one that they put in. Elite at 21, the original Elite, which was, it blew my mind when I first saw it, and Elite 2 blew my mind even more. But it was more of a graphic. I mean, Elite just was so immense,
right?
For the amount of space it took on a disc. Let's see if there's anything else here. Well, let's just go. Super Street Fighter or Street Fighter 2 came in at 13 again. I'm not sure the Amiga version would be the one. It's a super swap fighters, disc swapping. So let's just quick briefly. We'll just look at the top 10 just for fun. Get your comments, Bo, because this is more in your wheelhouse than mine. But I'm interested to see what you think of this top 10. So coming in at number 10, the N64 GoldenEye. This was this was the big multiplayer event, right, when it came out.
Right. This was the game that if you were in high school or college like I was, you sat in the dorm, in the common room of the dorm with the TV, and you play it all night.
Yeah. My brother's a big fan. I've played it. I've played the single player version. I've never played multiplayer, but I hear it's nice. Number 9, Resident Evil 4, which I believe was that the one that came out with the Wii and the GameCube.
No, Resident Evil 4 came out. It was a GameCube exclusive at first, and it was the first Resident Evil to not have those tank controls. It actually controlled like a normal third person.
Have you had to go with that?
I've never played any of the Resident Evils except for the first one.
Yeah,
but I know that it has a lot of love.
I know Resident Evil 1. I hope you enjoy looking at doors open and close. Number 8. This is actually sort of Amiga related, thanks to Vampire 2. Doom.
Oh, yeah.
Now, boy, I don't know why I do this, folks, but because I don't have an Amiga 600, but I guess I'm sort of salivating. I've been looking a lot into the Vampire 2 Accelerator, and I'm starting to see people playing Doom and Duke Nukem with it, and it's very exciting. I absolutely cannot wait for an Amiga 1200 version of this. I'm going to be all over this thing, but this thing's looking real promising. But Doom was a good game. I'm guessing you played that back in the day.
I played the first level that came on the shareware disc.
Really, that's all.
That's it.
We played the crap out of this thing. Doom was the reason we got network cards originally, because there was no other reason to have any, at the time. Great game, fun. I mean, unfortunately, it marred a lack of innovation that has still intact. Yeah. 7, Final Fantasy 7, a game that another one of these I never understood the appeal, but people love it.
I never played Final Fantasy 7. It's hard to believe, but at that point I was still a Nintendo guy. I didn't have a PlayStation. And I remember your brother. He was crazy for it.
Oh, loved it. Number 6, Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, which that is the second one.
That is the first Super Nintendo.
That's the first one. Oh, the first Super Nintendo one. Okay.
That's really, I think I would be surprised if there was a game that's high, a Zelda game higher on the list. I haven't seen the rest of the list yet, but that game is pretty near for the kind of game that it is. It's pretty perfect, as far as your top-down 2D platform dungeon exploring game.
What was the side-scrolling
that
jumping
was Zelda
game?
2.
See, that of all the Zeldas, that's the only one I even remotely
That
liked.
one is terrible.
It's hard. But coming in at number 5, Super Mario 64. Pretty crazy game when it came out. Just crazy innovative in terms of the way it looked. But when you boil it down, number 5 of all time. I mean, I like it. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, it was it blew everyone's mind at the time. But I mean,
I feel pretty good about that, because that game revolutionized gaming in a way that a lot of games that are considered classics didn't.
To me, I mean, it was very revolutionary.
It was the first time that you could control a character in 3D space and it actually felt real. It wasn't wireframes. It wasn't some abstraction. You were Mario, and you could run around that field outside the castle and jump in the water. To me, and maybe it's because of my age, it just, that game changed gaming forever in ways that we still feel now. Much more than games that I prefer that are really seen as, classics.
I will say, I thought it was a good game. I think that was, I think Nintendo sort of followed natural progression of the way games were. I think games are going to go that way.
Well,
now, but
in
I
hindsight, we can see that. But
well,
we couldn't
yeah,
see
but
that
there
at
was
the
other
time.
things. Like there, what's the little dragon guy, Pyro or
Spyro was after that.
Spyro? But I mean, they were all coming up on the heels. You know,
I don't think so. I think all of that development started after Mario 64.
I think it's a good game. Number 5, I'm just saying that's pretty high. Number 4, hey, this is an Amiga one, Tetris. It's on everything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, calculators, watches, everything has Tetris. Tetris and Snake. You know, you can find on every machine. Tetris.
You can't argue with Tetris.
Are you a fan?
I like Tetris. I played a lot of it, the DS version,
Uh-huh.
because you could play live online multiplayer with other people. Yeah, I like Tetris.
Tetris, great
I'm a
game.
fan.
Great, probably my favorite puzzle game. Number 3. This is sort of a surprise to get this high. Shenmue.
Really?
I have a Dreamcast. I've got Shenmue. I've never even come close to beating it. It's a tough game and long.
You know, this is I don't understand this one. I know that Shenmue has a lot of love, and this is a reader's poll. So I mean, but number 3 classic game of all time. You know, I don't get it. But
Well, maybe this is a silent vote for the Dreamcast as a system.
yeah, true.
You know,
true.
but,
The Dreamcast is very beloved, much maligned.
Yeah, yes, indeed. Number 2, The Legend of Zelda: Ocarina of Time.
Okay.
Another one I see always high on these lists. Again, this is a fan list, so I don't know.
It's a fan.
You know,
It's just like Shenmue, you know.
yeah,
It's-
but I actually like of the Zeldas that's ever been on the list that we've mentioned. This is probably one I like more.
I
than the
played
others.
the heck out of this game when I got it. It was the first 3D Zelda. It took all the things that were great about Mario and put them into the Zelda universe, except you couldn't jump.
Kind of neat. And number 1 on the ultimate 150 greatest games of ever, as per voted on by the readers of Retro Gamer, Super Mario World 1. Number 1, best game of all time. Now, this is a game I actually have played and beaten, and it's a very, very good elite level platformer. There's no doubt about it. Again, best game of all time. I don't know. It's awful good. I mean, I'll be fair, but of course the list is subjective. I mean, my favorite game of all time is probably like Donkey Kong. Now, it's nowhere near as complex as a game like this, but I keep going back to it. Or Mr. Do, but that's just the way my brain works.
Right.
Some people like Shenmues and
Right.
Zeldas.
And I think it's
like
important to make a distinction between, best games of all time versus most influential games of all time. 'Cause
Right.
sometimes people vote thinking about, what games influenced other games, but those aren't always the best games.
Yeah, correct.
And so, I think I personally, my favorite game, probably, Do Run Run on the arcade. The Addams Family, of course, my favorite Amiga game.
I'll have to say I liked Moon Knight a lot.
Moonstone.
Moonstone last week an awful lot, and found myself playing that a little bit this week again, just trying to get better at it. What a cool game that was.
Yeah.
But Super Mario World, not bad. So anyway, I just thought that was something we could look into real quick. It's good to see there was a few Amiga games represented on there.
Right, and I think that really shows too that this is a it would be interesting to see the an American poll, because I imagine most of the readers of Retro Gamer are from the UK, so you're going to get more PC, you're going to get more computer titles in there for the better.
I'd say a lot of those titles would stick, though. I mean, there's Nintendo games. It's funny, Nintendo's always at the rear here recently. But all their games are so beloved.
Well, I'm talking
it's amazing.
about, I noticed Chucky Egg was on that list.
Yeah.
Almost guarantee if you polled U.S. readers, Chucky Egg.
Oh, yeah, absolutely not. And I doubt Elite would be on there.
Right.
Or
and so, in a lot of ways,
Cannon
the
Fodder.
UK, because they had, the early 80s, they had development studios in the UK where there were none in America. Everything was coming from Japan. You get a much more varied, kind of more comprehensive look, which is appreciated, which is another reason why we read Retro Gamer.
Yeah, so if you're interested in that sort of thing, pick it up. They occasionally do some Amiga coverage in here, and this month they've got a big thing on the C64 also, so if you're into that sort of thing, pick it up. Speaking of magazines, before we close out, you'll recall last month we reviewed...
Last week.
Last month. What month are we in? I don't even know. Last week we reviewed a magazine. What was the name of that magazine?
Amigaville.
Amigaville. It looks like, sadly, that the fellow that was putting it out, and I mean fellow, as in one guy, is shuttering and closing the doors on the magazine, at least for now. I hope he reconsiders. Actually, I really enjoyed it. We didn't mention it last week, but the issue 4 had a really interesting article on Doom and Doom clones on the Amiga that was really fascinating. I kind of enjoyed that too, and I wouldn't mind seeing it keep going. Again, £2. I just paid $14 for this thing. £2. I'd part with that in a heartbeat. Bo?
Yeah. Well, I think that you have to look at it whenever you're creating anything. You have to look at it from the perspective is, it's great if I get this money, but the money shouldn't be the motivating factor as to whether the thing exists or not. For example, we'd be sitting down here talking about Amiga, whether we got paid to do it or not.
Which we don't. I can tell you.
Well, we do though. I mean, we got sponsors.
But it's not like we're making like $100 million.
No. But I mean, like, if we, if all our if all of our Patreon people decided to stop supporting us tomorrow, the show would come out next week. Don't stop supporting us.
Ignore him.
But we do it because we love it, and because it's not it doesn't take an amount of work that takes over our lives and makes us feel stressed. Aaron comes down here, we put the show together, I put it online. It's not a very hard thing to do. Putting a magazine together is a hard thing to do.
Yeah, very labor intensive, very just coming up with the articles would be difficult.
Even the layout, just making all the layout look decent, and I mean it did. It looked good.
Yeah.
So I mean, I can understand. Why he's discontinuing it. I just hope that he takes things that he writes in the future and submits them to other publications.
Sure.
We definitely need things like that. We need Amiga publications out there.
Yeah, I agree.
One other thing I was thinking of that I didn't bring up last week is, did you know there's actually a paper Apple II magazine? It comes out in physical form every month. It's called Juice GS, and what's his name is the guy that's behind it.
What's his name? I love that guy.
Yeah, not Carrington, but the other guy. On the Mike McGinnis,
the No Quarter podcast guys. Yeah,
Mike McGinnis is the editor of that. But I mean, they publish I think the monthly magazine. It's like $20 a year or something. And I just thought we were talking about magazines for classic computers, and I just think it's amazing that they're still able to publish a paper version of that.
I think there's still an Amiga magazine that comes out every month, isn't
it? Well,
it's
interesting that you mentioned that because we were talking about it. I think it was Dreamcatcher commented on the YouTube video that we did last week, saying that he posted, because I was like, I wonder when the last Amiga magazine finally went under, and he posted a big list of I guess they were maybe all Amiga magazines, maybe just in Europe, but there were some, I think, like Amiga Format or something was still kicking in 2001. They didn't shutter until like May 2001.
I believe that.
So
I'm not surprised.
For a system that met its demise, in 1994, for all intents and purposes, to keep soldiering on with, a magazine, a for-profit magazine.
I wonder what they put in it there towards the end.
Yeah, I would love to get their last issue or their second to last issue just to see.
No kidding. But I think it seems like I was on Amiga Kid or somewhere, and there's someone selling a magazine for the Amiga. I want to look into that and come back to y'all. But
we'll report back on that next week.
Anyway, Amigaville, we liked your book, and if you ever decide to start it back up, give us a jingle, and we'll have a look.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Aaron, are you ready to talk about the Chaos Engine?
Hey, Chaos is my business.
No, the Chaos. Is it the Chaos Engine, or is it just
Chaos
That's
Engine.
what I thought. I thought there was a definite article involved. So this was published by Renegade Software, developed by the Bitmap Brothers.
I think they were sort of one and the same. I think the Bitmap Brothers were behind Renegade Software, I think they did their own publishing.
And this is the first game that we've played that has a setting that's kind of ubiquitous today, but not as common then, the steampunk setting.
Right.
Steampunk's a big deal these days. Everybody's got their welded together glasses and their umbrellas that are also flamethrowers. But back then, it was not as common.
I believe that I read that this game was at least loosely based on a William Gibson book.
Really?
And now,
he's
if you're
he's
familiar
the
with him,
cyberpunk guy,
correct?
Right?
He did Neuromancer, and he did several other books. I loved Neuromancer, and by the way, the game is great too. We should probably do that one of these days. But you can sort of see the influence. I mean, saying the game is based on something. This game has a plot. It's like saying Gauntlet has a plot.
Right.
You know, go do this or that. But yeah, so I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah. So the Chaos Engine is actually a thing. It's this guy named Baron Fortescue. That's how we say it in America, Fortescue. I'm sure that's not right.
That's how we say it, is it?
and you've got to defeat the Baron, blow up the Chaos Engine, and you win.
Well, I mean, did you actually watch the little movie that comes on the CD32 version?
No, I didn't play the CD32.
Actually, I've got this for CD32, so I've seen the movie. But basically, from what I could remember, a time traveler comes to this time period. He loses his technology, something like that, and this guy uses the technology to build all kinds of crazy contraptions, and he builds the Chaos Engine. But what happens is when the Chaos Engine malfunctions, it absorbs him, and it basically ruins the UK effectively. So where you're playing is in the UK, and it turns people into monsters. There's a cool video that comes at the beginning of the CD32 version. It turns all these people into monsters, and the people that you're playing are basically people that are hired to go in. They're bounty hunters or soldiers of fortune that go in, and they're trying to infiltrate and steal and defeat this Chaos Engine before it takes over the world. They're shutting it down to bring that area back to normal, as I recall. So I thought it was a pretty good plot for what the game actually is. It's pretty good, I thought.
You want to talk a little bit about the Bitmap Brothers?
Yeah, sure. The Bitmap Brothers, boy, I was talking to Bo before we went on the air. I don't think we've done any of their games, and they were an awesome game developer. Just to go into some of their stuff, they did obviously Chaos Engine. They did Chaos Engine 2, which was fun. They did Cadaver 2, which I have to say I've not played the Cadavers, but I've heard they're good. The Payoff, Gods, which is an interesting game. Magic Pockets, Speedball, and Speedball 2 Bro Deluxe, which are both top shelf games in my opinion. Xenon and Xenon 2 Mega Blast. I love Xenon 2 as a shooter. It's a very good game. And again, we'll probably get to some of these in the future. Basically, the Bitmap Brothers are kind of still around. I mean, they actually released, there's a version of this game on Steam that you can play multiplayer online. Pretty neat. Mm-hmm. I think that would be kind of fun. The last thing they released, I think, was that. Apparently, they got something else in the kitty, but I couldn't find any information out. It's one of those companies that sort of faded away, but they're sort of still there, sort of like a Cinemaware.
Right.
The game that they came out with some stuff for the portable systems. Well after the Amiga, so they kind of lumbered around. They had a release in 2002 for get this, they released games for the Game Boy Advance and the Pocket PC platform. So,
yeah, picking a winner.
They were based out of a place called Wapping, East London. Ever heard of that? Wapping?
Never heard of it.
I guess is that right, guys? Wapping. You can tell me if I'm wrong. The company was ran by a guy named Mike Montgomery. He also worked on the game. Eric Matthews and Steve Kelly, and eventually Montgomery took over the whole outfit. They were known for games that were very highly detailed. They were known for having games that were all over the spectrum, always different, always unique, and they were known for their games being very, very difficult. So, and again, like I said,
there's a lot of developers that made games for the Amiga whose names were known for being difficult.
Yeah. It was so they were a good outfit. Like I said, just from listening to what games they had a lot of good stuff. Again, they may still be around. Apparently, they released something called Speedball 2 Evolution, which had some kind of tournament play in it, which I've never heard of. And I guess it was a PC game, and apparently it didn't do very well, but I'm looking into it. And apparently, there's also possibly a Speedball 3 floating around or something that was never released. So, who knows? So, but pretty much, Bitmap Brothers had a lot of good stuff. Are they gone? I don't know.
Yeah, who knows? So this, I think I said that this came out in 1993. So we're nearing the end of the Amiga's life. But conversely, this is when some of the most graphically impressive games are coming out.
Absolutely.
This is a very good looking game. It's got, I was a little disappointed that they chose the particular starting area that you started. You kind of start in this swamp, jungle type deal that's a lot of brown and a lot of green.
It is the lamest looking of the bunch, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think you're right.
But the characters that you pick, when you start the game, you're shown this screen that has the characters that you're allowed to choose, and you're allowed to choose. I think there's 6 of them, and they all have different abilities. They all have different weapons, and the profiles. The pictures of your characters look great.
Yeah,
and
they're
also,
very stylistic.
Yeah, and also once you're in the game, you can still tell, who you've chosen. It's not like Lionheart, where you watch the intro movie. There's this guy that looks like a cat dude, and then he looks kind of like a lady in the actual game. That was very well done. One thing that I thought was confusing about this game is that when you start it up, you're given a set amount of money to spend on your character. And I think you're given like $30,000, and the characters cost different amounts, but none of them cost more than what you got. Maybe it's because I didn't make it to the end of the first stage. And that's where the shop is.
Yeah, there's a shop in between. I think it's every second level.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I just didn't make it far enough because I was like, I'm getting this money. What good is it doing me?
Yeah, there's a shop. I think it's between every second level. You can get various special abilities and whatnot. I like that aspect. That seems to be another thing that the bitmaps like, because that's also in Xenon, and it's also in Speedball, where you can kind of jack stuff up. So I like that's cool. It's nice to augment your guy a little bit. I like the graphics a lot myself. They're very crisp. They're very colorful for the most part. The frame rate's a little wonky at times. I remember playing this. Now it runs pretty good on my 1200, but I remember playing this on my 1000. I always thought it ran just a little frame rate, a little wobbly. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, good game. Music I thought was pretty good. I think, let me look here. The guy that did the music is the official guy. Yeah, Richard Joseph. He's done everything. We've covered so many of his things, including Moonstone, the Barbarians, the James Bond, Sensible Soccer. He's like an old friend now, because this guy, he must have been the premier musician.
We need to get him on the show.
Oh, yeah. I think he's actually passed.
Oh.
I think. Don't hold me to that if you're still around. Sorry. But I like the different characters were neat. I know really, that's where the steampunkiness of all of it comes in, just the way they look. That's,
right.
When you're actually playing the game, you're not thinking, oh, man, I'm in a steampunk world. You're just like, I'm in a world. And
there's monsters.
Yeah, and the monsters are pretty wacky. I'm not good enough to get very far, but I watched the playthrough to see what happened on the later levels. Some of the monsters get pretty interesting. They look like Incredible Hulks on one level. There's one level there's human hands walking around, sort of like a thing. And then there's one of the last levels. There are these kind of like floating robot-looking things that come after you. So there's a decent array. The environments aren't good. It can get confusing. I would get lost quite often. Mm-hmm. Did you have that trouble?
I did. I would go down a path thinking I was going in the right direction, to kill all these enemies along the way, and then just reach a dead end. Or maybe they would have some weapons and items and things like that. But the good thing is that the enemies don't respawn. I don't think they do.
Well, they have these like gauntlet-like launchers that would pop up.
That's
and
what
eventually
it is.
they would just expend all the guys.
Yeah, or you can blow up the spawners.
Sometimes sometimes you can, sometimes you can't. Like Boat said, you get to pick a character. There's 6. There's a guy named there's a thing or a class called Navi, Thug, Brigand. There's a guy named Gentleman, and then there's a guy named Preacher, and apparently in the American releases of this, he got changed from Preacher to Scientist, which I read because they didn't want preachers to get killed.
Right.
I guess that makes
or
sense.
blowing up things.
Crazy preachers.
Yeah.
And of course, one guy will have more strength. I think the two strongest guys are very slow. That sort of thing. Better weapons and whatnot.
Yeah, and speaking of the ports, the U.S. versions of the Sega and the Super Nintendo version were called Soldiers of Fortune, which I can't think of a more generic, bland-sounding name than that.
Yeah, how can you not use the Chaos Engine? Now, that is an awesome-sounding name.
Yeah. Even there's a Sonic game called the Chaos Emeralds. Remember that?
No.
That might have... Yeah, I'm pretty sure there was a Sonic game called the Chaos Emerald, or the Chaos Emeralds were involved in one of the Sonic games.
Well, maybe they stole them.
That's true.
The game was very popular. I don't know if we mentioned it. It got ported to a lot of stuff. The Atari ST, of course, or the Amiga's little buddy, basically.
Yeah.
Joins at the hip. Super Nintendo, the PC. I remember having this on the PC, actually. The Genesis, a.k.a. the Mega Drive, and our old buddy, the Acorn Archimedes, got a copy of it.
I got to get one of those.
The graphics were reduced from 32 colors down to 16 for the ST version. I did read that. I thought that was kind of interesting, or dithered down. The game was 2 discs. So they packed a lot on 2 discs. I know the playthrough I watched, the guy went through it at a pretty brisk pace. Got through in about 2 hours.
That's a lot of content.
Yeah. The CD32. This also got separate releases on the Amiga. It had a OCS ECS release, and then it had a HEA release, and then it had a CD32 release. And the CD32 release had had a full intro, which I was telling Bode about, and then it also had sort of music, and it had a voice thing at the end. So it was the AGA version is supposed to be a little more colorful. They run better, I think. I'm not sure the color's any better, but they run better. I had a chance to have a look to see what this was going for. It's funny, last week, Moonstone, which was a game not released here, and I don't know if it was as popular. It was so expensive, I couldn't believe how much it was going for. This game, very popular game. You can get them. These things, they're falling out of the sky. You get them for $10, $15 or less, all over the world. They're available. The CD version is plentiful, in particular. You can get that one anywhere. It's just a jewel case, so no problem with picking them up. One of the neat things about this game was that you could play 2 players simultaneous on the same team, or you could have 1 player with a computer buddy. What did you think of your computer buddy when you ran through?
He was moderately useful.
Yeah.
He didn't seem to get in my way.
Mine didn't get stuck behind stuff. You know.
He never seemed to do anything offensive, and so I was glad to have him. I think that this is another one of these games. We haven't actually talked about if we like the game or not. Maybe we should do that.
That's because I go ahead. What do you think of the game? It's been called Gauntlet-y.
Yeah.
Your thoughts?
It seems to lack a lot of incentive to replay it because it's yet another title that I could not get past. I got past the first level, but I could not get past the second level to get to the shop because I didn't even know there was a shop.
Yeah.
And so without any kind of motivating factor to spur me on, the first level itself, I felt like it just the game was not for me. I like Gauntlet. I think part of the charm of Gauntlet lies in the myriad enemies that attack you at once. It seems like thousands of bad guys rush you all at once. You have I tried a couple of the different characters. They all have different weapons, but they all seem to do the same thing. I liked having the special weapons. They were okay. But I really think if they would have if they would have told you somehow at the beginning, hey, try and get to the store on the second level so you can upgrade your weapons, or just given you some reason like that to want to keep playing, I think I might have stuck it out a little bit longer, got a little bit better.
It's funny, when this game came out, I remember it was quite a popular game, and looking over the reviews, I'm looking here at the a lot of magazines of the time gave it 90s, 90, somewhere between 90 and 100%, and I recall one of them giving it was in like the top 10, I think, of all time, or maybe it was 11. So it was very well received. Mm-hmm. And the Bitmap Brothers, to their credit, they did solid work. It was a solid, like I said, it ran pretty good, and it looked great, and I thought it played pretty well. That much said, and the environment and the world they'd built was cool with the steampunk.
The backstory is neat. Yeah.
The graphics, the way they illustrate. But I mean, when you get boiled down to the basics, it was okay. I mean, it was. I mean, I hate to say it, but it was very godly. It really was. I know people are getting aggravated, but I mean, that's what it reminded me of a lot. It just and
there's a lot of games, especially at this era. There were a lot of games that I remember coming out on the Super Nintendo that were kind of like this. It kind of reminded me of the top-down sections of Contra that were on the 16-bit platforms. There even like a game like Fester's Quest. Did you ever play that?
I've seen it, yeah.
So I mean, it just seemed like there were the 16-bit era. There were a lot of these games. They all kind of had that same drab color palette, and they just didn't excite me. And it really was the first part of me kind of getting out of the video game scene. Was a lot of these games that kind of looked like this.
Yeah. Well, I will say in its defense, I thought the worlds themselves were neat. There's several levels that are, like I said, I don't know how much of it you watched after you got.
I didn't watch any of the playthroughs. So.
There's a world where it's this kind of like mud pits, and the parts where you can't walk will kind of bubble up.
Well, that's I mean that's yeah. You're talking about the first levels,
right?
So. Okay, yeah.
There's castles and there's castle kind of levels. I mean, I thought they did a good job with the backgrounds. I mean, trust me when I say this, I don't think there's anything wrong with the game. It's moderately fun game, and I bet it'll be a lot. I bet me and Bodo end up finishing up. We'll go over and play it together. It'll probably be more fun with two people than it was with one.
Guaranteed.
Which is good. Hey, multiplayer, great. And I'm sure an online version of this is really fun. But it was a very beautiful thing on a very basic concept. I mean, it's basically... it's like a Berserk or something. You run around a maze, a very complex maze, but a maze, and you just happen to have a special weapon or maybe special abilities. I was disappointed when I watched the playthrough that there weren't. I figured there'd be end bosses between each level. There's not. There's one main end boss at the end, and even that's pretty lackluster. Overall, that was disappointing. The music I thought was good. The graphics are good. Everything's tight. But I'm going to give it a marginal thumbs up just because it's just sort of a game. In fact, of all the Bitmap Brother games we mentioned earlier, and Speedball, let's face it, sort of runs on this kind of same view. I think this one I don't like up in that area. I mean, it's okay. It's not the best.
Yeah, I agree. Anyway, that's our review on the Chaos Engine.
Yeah, still, it's a good game. Try it out, and like I said, multiplayer. Check out our live review, and we might like it a lot more here in about 10 minutes.
Yeah, that seems to be the case with a lot of these games. We come out of the podcast kind of down on a game, and then when we play it together, we're like, "Hey, this is great."
The soccer game is the one that jumps into my mind instantly.
So, anyway, before we wrap this thing up, I'd like to thank our sponsors. We've got Will Williams, we got Weiju, Daniel Bingston, O'Brien's Retro and Vintage, Brent Dowdy, and Chad Halstead.
Thanks, guys.
And next week, we are going to play kind of a salute to Dave Needle. We're going to play Epic's Winter Games.
Winter Games. We've been trying to get to an Epic, so this will be our first one. And say, we got to do it while it's still winter.
Yeah. So, as always, if you'd like to sponsor our podcast, keep us going, you can visit our page at patreon.com/Amigos podcast. And stay tuned for our live playthrough. Until next time,
adios.